I'm here with Devin Townsend to talk about his current tour. He's traveling across North America, hitting cities high and low. He just played in Hamilton, which is pretty much considered by all the armpit of Ontario. And we're here to find out all about how the tour was going and how was the night in Hamilton, that great city of ours.
So let me just ask before we start. So Hamilton is considered by even the local residents to be the armpit of Canada?
No, not by the local ones, but they don't count towards
Oh,
towards that. You know,
understood.
the rest of Ontario made a decision, a group decision that excluded
Understood.
them from said decision of making Hamilton the armpit of Ontario.
Well, I mean, it was actually all right. I did find there was certain moments walking around that I might have agreed with that assessment, but for the most part, the people were friendly and the show was good. So I'm going to plead the fifth on that one.
How's the tour been so far, all around?
It's been really nice. I mean, the three bands and their crews are all, everybody gets along. It's a good vibe. I think everybody sort of shares the feeling though that we're at the end of a cycle. And I know Dream Theater's been out on their record for several years, and this is one of the last runs that I'll be doing on this album cycle before I start writing again. And I think the same with Animals. So there's a lot of phone scrolling that happens backstage, but the vibe is good, and I'm very grateful to be on this run for a number of reasons. So for me personally, I'm enjoying myself.
How do you prepare for a tour? Not just this tour, but a tour in general. Do you go through specific steps that you need to take in order to be ready to hit the road?
I'd say everybody's different. There's some people who really relish the social side of being on tour, and I'm sure their preparations would be different than mine. But for me, it's a very abrupt transition from one essentially life to another. I go from being at home and taking care of my parents and kids and yard work and writing and a very established kind of daily routine to an entirely different daily routine that forces me to above and beyond the fact that I love playing music and I love being able to present the music to people. I'm very grateful for that. You have to learn pretty quickly what it's like to exist within an inch and a half of 12 other human beings on a steel tube for God knows how long. And that transition usually takes me about a week on either side, like a week, maybe a week and a half to get used to, and then a week, maybe a week and a half on the other side of it to shake. And so the preparation for me, it depends on which tour, but to varying degrees, a lot of it for me requires just getting sort of in my own space and figuring out a routine daily that I can glean some sort of control over in a fundamentally chaotic environment.
I like the fact that you use the two words of steel tube, because lately people stuck on a steel tube hasn't have positive outcomes. So
yeah, there's that.
Interesting that you went with that choice of words to represent the life on the road.
Well, I think less so than a deep sea submarine excursion. I would say that a solid analogy for being in a touring band is being on a fishing boat. So maybe not a tube, but maybe a steel barge for sure.
Is it difficult for you when the time came for you to put the set list together for this specific tour, because you obviously have a limited amount of time, so you have to be considerate of which songs to play, the fans, what they want to hear. You also have the record that you have to support. I mean, there's a
Totally.
lot of things to consider. So was it difficult to put this set list together?
In a sense, yeah. I mean, if somebody came up to anybody and said, okay, you've got now 32 records worth of material, which equates to hundreds of hours of material, like hundreds of hours of material. And you're given 55 minutes. So trying to make some sort of a representation of a 30 some odd year old career with 55 minutes poses a problem. So the way that I solve that is I take a couple of songs from the new thing that we're trying to promote, a couple of songs that I know people typically request and want to hear consistently, and then a couple of songs that I want to hear. That's the best way for me to proceed. And each tour I try to shift that up a little bit, but by doing that, you're never going to make everybody happy. But I think it plays out as a good experience for an audience, and one that I'm satisfied with, so I'm cool with it.
So from the new record, you're playing Dimensions and Lightworker. How's the
Yeah,
reception to those two tracks been by the fans?
I think really good. I think Lightworker in particular is got a really good reception. I mean, the records that I released over the course of the pandemic were they were sort of released in a cloud of chaos that the world was still trying to contend with. So to a certain extent, there's some of that material that fell by the wayside for people. But I think that as time goes on and people have an opportunity to see what had been done with the puzzle, for example, and with light work, and with a lot of the things that had happened during that period, I think that the reaction is that it resonates with people more than they realized. At least that's my interpretation of it. And for me, I was very satisfied with all the material that we released during that period, so I'm happy to play any of it. And those ones seem to work best.
When you look at the fan base and you look at the reception you're getting from the songs, obviously the fan base coming to these shows, there's a cross-pollination perhaps of Dream Theater fans, Devin Townsend fans. How has that been for you? Do you see a lot of Dream Theater fans also being your fans anyways? And
Not
making
in the
it more
beginning. No, I think that there was actually very little crossover. There was some between the Dream Theater fans and what I do in the past, but I think we've kind of existed in parallel
universes?
universes, sure. um, but I think one thing that I find really gratifying about this tour, and something I'm very thankful for, is that perhaps the reason why there's been a parallel existence between the two worlds is that the reputation that I've had throughout my career has been one that perhaps gets hindered by the fact that I do so many different things, right? Like 1 minute I'll do something that's quiet, and then it will be heavy, and then it'll be orchestral or new agey or country or whatever. And that has definitely confused a lot of the casual listeners. But the Dream Theater camp, the band and the crew, has given my work such an endorsement with this tour that I think it has allowed some of their fan base to sort of put aside some of their preconceived notions and just give it a listen. And I'm just very grateful for that, because I think over the course of my career, there's been a lot of what I do sort of existing on the peripherals of what's going on musically, and a lot of that includes the peer groups. So to have a band sort of give it this kind of platform is I'm just very grateful for it. And as such, I think we get more fans coming through from their side.
When I travel around the world and I talk to metalheads and I tell them I'm from Canada, the two bands or the two names that come up is Rush and Devin Townsend. It's like, and nobody knows anything else that's ever come out of Canada musically. It's you and Rush.
Wow, that's great company to have, man.
Yeah. Do you realize all you need now is a beer? Like you need a Devin Townsend beer for the cycle to be complete.
Well, I got La Croix.
Well, see, maybe you need to talk to them and they can have your own flavor or something like that.
Man.
Does that sense of being such an, I mean, maybe you don't see it that way, but obviously fans see you as an iconic figure in the music world, and specifically coming from Canada. Does that weigh on you at all when you're going on these tours, and there's a certain responsibility that maybe you have towards your fans, and what do you have to put forward?
It's a hard question to answer because I don't see myself in the same light. It's very humbling to hear that people may consider me as such, but I truly don't think of myself in those terms. I think, if anything, the progress that I make creatively the objective for that progress is rooted in something that type of thinking doesn't even play into, right? I'm just trying to sort myself out. That's my whole objective in life, and music is a byproduct of that. That's all it is. And so if there's any resonance within that for an audience, I think what they're relating to is something that we're both participating in, you know, myself and the audience. And I'm totally cool for people to feel something towards that, because I think that's awesome. But in terms of having any expectation that comes from the audiences, you know, towards my work, the only expectation that I feel from them is the same one, in the same breath that I just explained, that I feel towards the work, and that's to remain authentic. And I'm fortunate to be surrounded by great people, and people who who definitely keep me humble, or at least try to, in the extent that my fuck ups allow. And in fact, if I think about any expectation from the audience, it kind of changes my process in a way. So I don't read online comments. You know, I post things, I put things up on Instagram and when I'm on tour, and I'll put things up on YouTube, but I don't read the comments. Like, I just don't. I don't think it's healthy for anybody. And my life is much better as a result of it. So I just try to better myself each time around. And I try to take stock of the ways in which the last record or the last project I personally felt could have been better, whether or not I didn't hit the mark on a lyrical level, or I didn't hit the mark on a sonic level, or I did hit the mark on a emotional level, whatever it is. As soon as the record's done, my next step is often just in light of that. I'm like, okay, so now that's done. What did you learn from that? What did I learn from the puzzle? What did I learn from Lightwork? What did I learn from Empath? What did I learn from strapping? And then it's just a progression. And if you keep that as your objective, I don't think there's really any way you can go wrong in terms of the authenticity. Specifically, it's like, you know, I've got so many people around me that have been friends and coworkers for years and years and years and years, that as soon as you step out of that, as soon as you start doing things that are not in line with your purpose, I think I'm going to have enough people that will tell me that I'm straying.
You're...
And yeah, dude, I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot, but
no,
it's like,
go ahead, sorry.
But if you do that, then I think the audience will, because from what I can tell, the audience appreciates the work because it's not lying to them, right? Whether or not I know I'm full of shit or not is a different thing, because each layer you pull away from your process, you realize that you were deluded by this, that, or the other thing. But that aside, man, I think as long as you're honestly trying to be who you are from year to year, then that's how come they resonate.
So speaking of fans, when you're on a tour like this with Dream Theater, is the reception from fans different on the Canadian dates versus the US dates? Going back to the fact that I just said that you're definitely a Canadian icon.
Well, thanks. Every culture's got its own idiosyncrasies, right? And I like them both. I mean, America, typically, I mean, some of my closest friends are American, so it's there's no blanket that you can give to any culture without being, you know, trying to marginalize people, right? But in general, I find American audiences tend to be a little more gregarious. They tend to be a little bit more overt with their reactions, and Canada tends to be slightly more reserved, but you know, people are people wherever you go. And you could say the same thing about any country. If we go between the UK and France, there's a difference between those two cultures, but on a one-to-one level, it's like people are either cool or they're not, right? Some of the best people I've ever met are Americans, some of the worst are Canadian, and vice versa. You know, I've met some of the best people ever who are Canadian, and I don't know, man. Plus, I can't see anything without my glasses. So if I'm playing and I don't have my glasses on, it's hard to tell.
Maybe that's what you should have done when you went to walk around in Hamilton, is not take your glasses with you. Then the city would have looked a lot better.
Hamilton, there was a lot of depression there, man. That was hard to see. There seemed like there was a lot of drugs and
A lot.
um, a lot of desperation in the area that we were in, and it's hard to see because you realize that there's not a lot you can do to help people, right? And one thing that I think it galvanizes though is that I think you're supposed to, or you should, at least in my estimation, help in the ways that you're able, and maybe by playing music, maybe that's something that on some tiny level, that's what we do, right? Like, but it was hard to see, man, because you just see a lot of it was, I guess it was welfare, and a lot of people in the bank were going in for like a food rebate, and
Yeah. I mean, I'm making
it's
light of the situation, but it's not a pretty picture, to be honest with you.
no, it really wasn't, man. It
But
really
sometimes you
wasn't.
have to make light of it just so that you're able to live with it. You know what I mean? 'Cause
No, totally. Yeah, gallows humor, man. It's the same thing. I went to a couple places over the last few years. We were in China and India, and there was a couple of the slums that we went through there, which is a whole different world. But a lot of the conversation there, from what I can tell, comes down to there's really nothing that can be done in a real basic sense. There's no easy solutions to any of these things because it's all so nuanced, the problems and how far back they go, and systemically and what have you. So maybe you're right. It's like, in light of that, yeah, just do
you
what you
have,
can.
it's like your own self-defense mechanism. You have to make a joke
Totally, yeah.
so that you can actually live through it every single day. The beer is
Side note, this flavor of La Croix sucks. It's
I
called
was just gonna say your face. Your
It's
face
awful.
painted a very vivid picture. We didn't need the words. The face was pretty much pretty much enough.
Well, it says cherry blossom, so I was assuming it would be sort of a floral thing, but I guess what they've done is they've tried to make seltzer water taste like chocolate, and it's like fucking gross, man.
I feel the same way about the new Bublé's water thing, the bubbly, whatever it is. Anyways, I don't want to give him. Not that he needs my promotion, anyways, but I'm sure
They've just run out of ideas for flavor. They just need to think of something like shoe leather or something.
yeah. I mean, shoe leather. Wow, that would be quite the drink. It would be very tasty.
It would be better than cherry blossom.
You mentioned putting the set list together. At the end of the day, there's going to be some songs there that you want to hear. Do you have an absolute favorite Devin Townsend song?
Uh, I've got a few that I really like, but if I had to choose one, it's probably still Truth. I still really like that song. So I included it this time because the band plays it very well, and in order for it to be done in the ways that I think is respectful to the things that brought it forth, it needs to be played a certain way, it needs to sound a certain way. And so knowing that this group of people and this front of house crew can pull that off, I decided to put that one in because it's probably my favorite.
As a music fan, do you how can I put this question to you? You mentioned earlier, let me go back a little bit. You mentioned earlier that
Yeah.
as you finish the album, you think about the lessons that you can take from that album. So now, as a music fan that enjoys live shows, do you take lessons from tours like this? Is there something that you're going to look back and say, next tour we're going to do different because of this that I've learned?
Yeah, there's lots to learn from touring, and it's different than what you think. It's the social interactions and how simple it is for the equilibrium of a group of adults traveling together, three bands and truck drivers and bus drivers and crew and merchandise, and how easy it is for the equilibrium of that to get messy. And it can be as simple as, if you are the leader of an organization, all it can take for your sense of self to be inflated temporarily is like a really good show, or maybe you got some accolades and maybe you made some money or whatever you did, and the subtlety of how your participation with that trip can affect everybody else is not to be undervalued, man. I think there's maybe some people that wouldn't recognize that, but I certainly see the ways in which every part of a touring organization affects every other part. If one person's sick, it very easily infects everybody else. If one person's depressed, very easily depresses everybody else. If one person is like, you know, overly hyped or in a shitty mood or whatever, it's just it's the subtlety of it is crazy, man. And it becomes this organism, and there's a lot to learn from that, because you're in a bubble out here as well. Like when you travel, your whole world becomes this. Your whole world becomes, oh, there's this one interaction that happened between, you know, the guitar tech and the merch guy or whatever that is affecting morale, or or conversely, you know, you because it is so insular, you have a really good show, and then in your own frame of mind, you start to overvalue what the importance of the job is, and how that can affect everything else is like really subtle. I'm pretty grateful for the bad days out here as well, because if you have a day where you played this really big show and it's really great and you sold a lot of merchandise, there's a lot of people, and you know, you get a bunch of people that maybe tell you that your band is great, your shit doesn't stink or whatever, and the next day you just tank. It's like it's a third of the people there that we were expecting. You didn't sell anything, and you had an argument with a buddy, and then something happened at home, and then you go up on stage, you try and sing, and then you overcompensate and you say something that offends somebody or whatever. That it's like those two of those things are really interesting, man. And every time I tour, I remember how delicate of a balance it is out here.
One last question for you. Outside of drinking cherry blossom or cherry flavored beer while on tour, what do you do to unwind? Because that fine balance that you mentioned before, you know, it also gets impacted by how you fill in the time that exists between going on stage and
Very much.
going on stage the next day. So,
Very much.
what does Devin Townsend do to keep his mind occupied, stay fresh, and stay balanced?
Excuse me. Well, in putting aside the fear of being perceived as more of a hippie than I actually already am, um, I exercise, I meditate, I eat healthy, I don't drink, and I don't do drugs out here. You know what I mean? So it's like all those things help me keep myself together. In the past, I've done all those things, and it's like it just makes it. I was thinking also the other day, if you're trying to wield something really heavy, which is the music to me, and you're unbalanced, it's like if you're wearing it on the top of your head, man, all it would take is 0.2% extra shifting to starboard for that to topple, right? So keeping yourself balanced is arguably the most important thing out here for me. But then again, it's like, dude, I'm like 51. I've been doing this forever. I've got a ton of side things that I'm working on, all of which interest me. There's a ton of things going on that I'm really excited to get going, and I work every day on these little side projects and everything. So it's not like I'm imposing these sort of disciplines on myself because I'm trying to flagellate myself or anything. It's because I really love what I do, man, and I want to be able to continue doing it. And I need my body to do that. I need my mind to do that. I need my teammates to be able to do that with me. And so there's a real practical reason for me to do it. And in light of that, when I choose to abstain from things, it's not a big deal. It's like it's a pretty easy decision to make.
Well, I think what we need to look forward to 2024 is perhaps now that the Queen is gone, is to get you on the $20 bill. So I think that should be our goal for next year. I'll start flying that flag. We need a better looking face on the $20 bill.
Well, you're giving me a lot of credit for that, man. But to be honest, as much as I appreciate that, and I'll take it if it comes up, um, I think my work functions best when I fly under the radar. You know, it's some people I know love attention. They just love the idea that it's like all eyes are on them, and that's when they perform their best. But for me, I want to be able to just kind of be under the radar, man. Like make enough money to do the things that I want to do, play for the people that want to play it, but I don't You know, someone's like, if you do this, you'll be able to play at the Super Bowl or something. Not that that would ever happen, but as an example.
Grey Cup, maybe, Grey Cup.
Well, if the decision for me to do that required me doing something that was like counterintuitive to what the process is, I'm happily willing to forego that, right? So we could put, who else? We should put Jim Carrey on the 20.
That wouldn't be a bad idea. That wouldn't be a bad idea either. I want to say that every time that this is my second time that we spoke on Zoom. We talked in the first, when you released the album, the latest record, and we're talking now. And I get the feeling like you're the kind of guy that doesn't compromise for anybody or for anything. You have your ways of thinking, your values, your perspective on what you want your art to be and what you want to be as an artist, which is sometimes even as important as the art itself. So I don't have anything to worry about that.
Well, I would say yes and no to that, though. And honestly, I don't compromise when it comes to my objectives and my vision, but the relationships that I value most are all long-term relationships, and you can't have long-term relationships without compromise. So I think that compromise is an essential part of my process. But in regards to certain things, you know, when it comes to what my foundation is on a creative level about trying to just represent something that I think is of importance that I can't put into words, so I try and write about it, then no, I won't compromise about that. But when it comes to other things, man, yeah, life is all compromise, and I'm totally down with it. Well, excuse me, this La Croix is not good. Hey, anybody, Cherry Blossom, yeah, fucking sucks.
I love it. I mean, this is a Devin Townsend interview, if you didn't notice. So thank you very much for your time today. I hope you have a wonderful time for the rest of the tour. I'll be posting this in the next couple of days with the tour dates below, so folks can go and catch you on the road with Dream Theater and Animal as leaders. Devin, once again, thank you very much. We'll talk when the next album comes out.
Thank you, my friend. It's a pleasure talking to you again.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.